you've mentioned Jonny a lot, obviously lead singer, if people don't know. And I think I'm quite intrigued because, like, I've been a fan of Twist Wheel for a while now, and like I was saying to her earlier, like when I was first getting into like less mainstream bands, I suppose you'd say, like that first Twisted Wheel album was one of the early ones that I heard and was like, oh shit, this is sick. So I've always like followed him as well on Twitter and stuff like that, and it just seems like a character is how I'd say it. So what is he really like to work with? Like positive, negative? Like how have you found it? Because I feel like he's quite a big name in and of himself.
First of all, as a human and a person, I mean, what a lovely, lovely guy, you know. We've been through a lot of problems as a band, and you know, he struggled with a lot of addiction. But underneath it all, you know, he's a really nice person at the end of the day, and that's just how I see him. You know, so there's times in the past where I've had to kind of distance myself from John a bit when he's been, let's say, having a hard time, and when you're in those moments like he's been in. One of the main factors of it is you do push your friends and family away a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been times, you know, where we've had to have honest words with each other. But in terms of like a musical guy and like a person and a friend, you know, you couldn't wish for a better ally, really. You know, for of course, sometimes he can be a bit unreliable or whatever. He's a great songwriter. And if you need to have a chat about anything, he'll talk to you. You know, he's a good listener. So yeah, that's my main thing with him, really. You know, we've had rocky moments, but you know, he's in a good place now, and that's the main thing. You know, we spoke about having the break from the band, and I said, John, don't worry about the pressure of the band or anything. You know, life and health goes above everything, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, really. We just send each other the odd message, and he's got a little musical project on the go.
Does he?
Which I don't know much about, but you know, it's a lot different. So he's working on that, and we're all working on stuff.
Yeah.
Which we're all hoping to like release stuff hopefully towards the end of this year anyway.
That's good. That's good to hear. It's nice to hear such positive words for so like in a world where there can be so many discrepancies and things where things get misconstrued by media and stuff like that, and people get painted in certain ways. It's nice to hear from like the actual inside what the person that you see in these, you know, news articles and whatnot, what this person's actually like from an insider.
Yeah, no, and like being in a band that's we've for 3 years we didn't stop. You don't stop for 3 years. You spend so much time with each other. You get to know a lot about each other. You know when to give each other space. You know when to like put your arm around someone. You know when to like distance yourself from them. But like, you know, like I said about the stories before about losing the drummer in Glasgow and having to do a gig with no rehearsal when the singer's only allowed out of hospital for a couple of hours and stuff, you know, stuff like that, you can laugh about it now, can't you? You know,
yeah,
it's memories at the end of the day. That's it. Everyone's in a good place. Whether the band comes back in the short term, long term, or never, you know, it's not massively important right now. It's just everyone's concentrating on the present, you know, and that's the important thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that is the important thing. And I think it's nice to see, I feel like with this new album, the music really did the talking. And I think maybe partly why it did so well is that sort of when it came down to it, like the songs are really good. And I think like I've seen him tweet before, and I know a lot of like people in the industry see like Twisted Wheel as a band that almost reached the top of indie, but then the mainstream media maybe didn't quite take to it as well. So have you, I know you've only been in it sort of more recently, but have you felt a bit like that like mainstream media has sort of not given Twisted Wheel the support it deserves? Or is it a bit like you're just happy with putting out and it does what it does?
I think the trouble is if in the modern day you have a reputation for being quite a hedonistic band, it can actually probably do you more harm than good.
Mm.
And the band got dropped by Columbia like way before I joined anyway. And part of the reason was the sort of off the stage stuff started to really affect everything in a negative way. And that it's probably that reputation from the early days, which means, when we did the third album, we didn't have a label behind it. We had to do it all ourselves. I feel like there's a very positive outlook on the band from certain sections of the media who see it for what it is. It's a band that means a lot it's a band that means a lot to like a cult following of people who were just invested wholly in the music and the energy of it. And there is another flip side to that where people just see Twisted Wheel in a completely negative light, which in some ways you can understand. But if we're talking about pure pound for pound music, then obviously music's all subjective, but I don't think anyone can doubt the quality of the music. Even if it's not their thing, I don't think anyone can turn around and say, there's not something about them.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's interesting. I think that's like what we were saying earlier, is like always have been one of them bands that when you listen, as you say, you can't doubt it. And there's been quite a few bands, especially from that era, even like when the first album came out and that, there's a lot of good bands that I always mention Milburn from Sheffield, who
like Milburn.
Like who are class. And like, I listened to their first album and I'm like, I just can't believe that they didn't go on to do like massive things. And I think Twisted Wheel are another band in that ilk, and especially with the way the new one went. And I know me and I want to pick your brain about that a little bit as well, is because like the new album sort of shocked both of us when it came out. It's like the quality of that third album is like ridiculous. Like I think,
yeah, absolutely, especially for it being a non-backed independent record for a band that hasn't, that has done it, been picked up. The first debut album was recorded in LA with some mental producers and some crazy people around, and this one being it almost like Soul Yourself and self-funded and self-orientated as a band. I think that, and it come out the way that it did and how fucking brilliant it was, shows the raw talent that the band has, and it shows a level that I think there isn't. Some bands you can tell when they get the backing by records, everything changes, it goes up a level massively, and it really does. And there isn't many bands that can prove that once the label has been dropped, they still can produce this level of record that is like unparalleled to a lot of things in the scene for that subsection of the indie music culture.